English short stories for beginners. 100 English short stories to improve vocabulary and learn English in a fun way. Learning English through short stories, episode 13. Number 85. The Maid. Maria comes from Poland and works twice a week as a maid in a big house. The house belongs to Miss Sanchez, who is living alone. Once in a while, her son comes for a visit. Her son is unemployed and receives some money from his mother. The son lives at a friend's place. He often comes in the morning hours to his mother's house and is watching TV. If the weather is fine, he sits on the terrace and drinks beer. Maria has to carry the empty beer bottles into the basement. In the basement are huge numbers of cases with full beer bottles stored. Ms. Sanchez works very hard. She works in a factory and comes home very late. But she often calls her son and also sometimes Maria. One day, the son asks Maria for a favor. He says, "I'll be on a trip to another country for a few weeks, but don't tell it my mother. Make it appear as everything is normal." "No problem," says Maria. The next few days, everything seems to be normal. Ms. Sanchez calls Maria and asks if her son still was at home and if all is okay. "Yes, Ms. Sanchez, everything is all right." Maria is sitting on the terrace and drinking beer. She'll carry the empty bottles in the basement. Number 86. The Merchant of Arts. In former times, Werner Schultz was an actor in a theater. In Berlin, he was well known and also had managed to get an important role for a television series in which he acted as a credible criminal. Mr. Schultz apparently was never poor and had always been interested in art and antiques. Now he was over 50 years old and received fever offers from movies and theaters. But Mr. Schultz had also become quite famous as an art painter. It can be said that Mr. Schultz was a real artist and also a connoisseur of art because he had a wide knowledge, especially of antique paintings. He was well acquainted with the Impressionists of the 19th century. After many years as an artist, actor, and painting expert, Mr. Schultz was a welcomed customer in many shops and galleries. Mr. Schultz bought many valuable oil paintings and antiques in antique shops and art galleries. But his reputation for being a good supplier was even greater. The quality of his paintings and the merchandise he offered to sell were outstanding. One day, newspapers reported that the famous art dealer and actor Werner Schultz had died. No one knew that he had died since Mr. Schultz had no relatives, therefore journalists were looking for friends and relatives. Recently, journalists found out what they were looking for. Mr. Schultz was a distant relative of Hermann Göring. Number 87. A New World. To this day, Ben Iglesias hasn't been able to explain it what had happened. His life was no worse than before, but the strange thing was that the feeling of not belonging here wasn't going away. However, that was not important anymore. It all began with the return flight from Mars to Earth, a journey that had been planned for a long time. For his crew of 4, it was their first trip. For Ben, it was already his 5th. As they entered the Earth's orbit, flickering light appeared for a couple of seconds. Alarm signals were ringing everywhere, and then he lost consciousness. When he woke up, his crew was dead, and the spacecraft had already landed, and all the instruments were dead. It was impossible to see how much time had passed since the accident. The weather, the coordinate data of the ship could not be correct. More important was the fact that there was no contact with the base. Everything seemed dead. For a couple of seconds, Ben looked out of the window. Where was the Caribbean Sea? He was supposed to fly over Cuba, but under the ship everything was yellow and brown. Ben exited the spaceship and saw a white desert until the end of the horizon. It was very hot and the atmosphere had only 60% oxygen. Suddenly, he couldn't believe what he saw. Slowly but surely, a group of humans approached. They surrounded him and said nothing. Ben wasn't afraid because they didn't look aggressive but completely different. The people were small, they were women and a couple of men, and they looked like birds. Were the Australian Aborigines? They were some resemblance, but they were very thin, almost the skeletons and as small as children. They gave Ben water and signaled him to follow the group. After a long walk, they came to a valley of stones covered with small holes that were entrances to giant dark caves. From somewhere down, there came the sound of water. It was Ben's first impression. How long had he lived here now? Ben estimated that he had already lived with these creatures for about 3 years. At first, the language was the most difficult part. Now they were like his family. His wife was 4 hertz smaller than him, but it worked. She always smiled at him. Life was no longer important. Ben felt good. His wife had the eyes of a black cat, and every day she laughed more. She had become pregnant. Number 88. Airbnb, the mysterious shadow and the revolver. Anna loves Airbnb. It's already the 3rd time that she spends her holidays in Airbnb apartment. Anna has rented a large apartment for an entire month. The owner spends most of his time in his room watching TV one night. Anna returns home. The television in owner's room is blasting on high volume. Anna knocks on the door, but nobody answers. She opens the door, enters the room, and screams. Anna stares at the old man who is sitting on the couch. His eyes and mouth are wide open. His head is covered in blood. In his hand, he holds a revolver. The man exactly has been shot. For the police, it is clear suicide and the body is quickly carried away. Anna couldn't go home because she couldn't change her flight, and so she decides to stay the rest of her holidays in the apartment. But nothing is as before. Anna cannot sleep at night. To find sleep, Anna smokes a joint before going to bed. One night, she wakes up. She sees a large shadow approaching her bed. Anna can't move nor scream. The shadow leans over her and lies down on her body. Darkness. Suddenly, sunlight shines through the window. Anna wakes up and feels bad. She is depressed. Was it a nightmare? At a besides table, she sees something dark. Anna takes it and it felt quite heavy. Now she is recognizing it. It is the old man's revolver. Watch the continuation of the stories in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. Remember to subscribe to the Mr. English channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos.